Can you hear me clearly? Patrick, can you just up the sound a little bit, just so that everyone can hear us? Thank you. Are you ready? Yes. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Kudi Maradzika. Today we'll be doing the Shaping the Future Women in Film and TV panel. I'm joined by these amazing guests. I'm going to allow them to each introduce themselves. Go ahead.
My name is Ziyanda. Hello everyone. I'm the managing director. Hi everyone, my name is Flavia Motsisi and I am from MultiChoice Showmax, and I guess as of 3 days, the scripted manager for the series in MultiChoice.
Patrick, we just have an issue with the sound. Keep talking.
Hi, my name is Tracey-Lee. I'm a tourist and I like jogging. But I'm a story development practitioner. I own a company called Oasis, and we do mentorship. We develop stories for the big and the small screen, and we train filmmakers.
Hello everybody, my name is Shirley Adonisi. I am the current channel director at GEMnet, and I look after 7 of the local channels that we have.
Hi everybody, it's amazing to be here, and this is just so momentous for me. I'm standing. I'm Nosipho of Maketo-van and Bragt, and I'm the CEO and owner of Chocolate Tribe. We are a VFX and animation company. Recently, actually, moved to Cape Town as well. Not me, but the branch of our company. And I'm also a founder of an organization or an initiative called Adonisi Animation Visual Effects Interactive Jersey.
Fantastic. Thank you very much and welcome, guys. So today we'll be speaking about the active policy and legislative measures that are being put across in the media industry to ensure transformation for women. You guys are all in different sectors, from production, broadcasting, development, and I'd like to ask you guys just various questions around that. And I suppose the first question is, how does one shape the future of women in the film and television in this industry? Where does transformation actually start? Maybe Tracey, let me start with you because you're facing me. How do we ensure rounded transformation in storytelling for future female filmmakers? Where do we start?
I mean, that's a multi-tier question. It's a good question. So I'm going to speak in story terms because I'm a story person. I think it has to do with having an intention and a vision and a goal. So I think we need to know what we want to achieve in the next 5 years and the next 20 years, because things can't just happen overnight. Good things take time. So for me, it starts with a vision, a goal, but also with training and development. I think the intake of female filmmakers, but I think black female filmmakers in particular, in our training hubs, in our programs, to use these programs to sort of develop the stories, to develop the talent, and I think to share perspectives that we haven't seen on the small and the big screen. So I think that's where it starts.
So representation and transformation is about development. Okay.
Yeah, because I think it filters into the stories that we tell as well.
Absolutely.
If you've got female writers and storyliners in a creative team, there is going to be a dimension to the stories that you design. You're going to subvert the cliche and the stereotype that we see in the stories on the screen at the moment. And it is getting better, but I think that there is scope to improve on that.
So this is transformation on a development side, but I'd like to know in terms of a production company, and Ziyanda, I'm going to ask you this. The transformation that you're seeing now, is it only happening at grassroots level, or is it something that's even moving on to the C-suite?
So, I think for a little bit of context, so that everyone is going to understand where I'm coming from when I speak today, I want to tell you a little story that my mother told me last week. And she said that when she was a very young girl, she came back from school one day and she ran to her father, my grandfather, and she was like, "Grandpa, I got into knitting and needlework and home economics."
And this man this is like 50 years ago, grabs her by the hand, he walks her back to the school, he asked to see the school principal. And he said, no daughter of mine is going to work so that she is somebody's worker. She will run her own company. She will be the change maker that you're going to see in the future. So best you skill her with what it is that she needs in order for her to be a change maker. And I think that's something that has been embedded in me, embedded in a lot of us as we're moving through in our industry. So from a grassroots level, I remember when I started in the industry, there was many women, there was many men. So this is not something that is starting now. We're picking up from other people who have positioned women in the industry in such a way that we can pick up from there and start to be the examples that they're going to see. What I did note, however, when I started in the industry is that it was very aggressive. We're as old as each other. When I started,
Very young.
you're very young. I know. I'm the oldest one on the stage. But when we started in this industry, it was very aggressive. And I'm not going to say it was male dominated. I'm saying it was aggressive. Men and women were very scary. And that was what we thought it was to be assertive. And that's what we thought it was to be somebody who's in charge. And I feel like, thank goodness for the change, thank goodness for things like 2010, thank goodness for the things like Me Too. We have transformed from an aggressive industry to a more compassionate industry. And I find that as we graduate to this C-suite, this is something that we are taking along with us, that there's no need for aggression in what we do. What we do is fun, and compassion leads more than anything else in order for us to get what needs to be done. So all the way from grassroots to the C-suite, there is an equal balance of both men and women, but I think what we need to understand is the attitudes that we put out there.
That's a beautiful response, thank you. That's beautiful and detailed, thank you. I want to ask you from your perspective, she's given us a story of where she started and your experience. What was it like for you in the world of animation? Comparatively from when you started to now, what is the transformation that you've seen? But also, I think most importantly, what is the transformation that you feel still needs to be put in place?
So I have the stories, and I think that's amazing, and on two levels. The first being the fact that we speak about the sort of global transformation of narratives and attitudes that women have, or women have been imposed, or that have been imposed on women. The change that I see, and I'm going to speak from a business perspective, is that a lot of the times the roles that are given to women are nurturing roles. So for example, most women will be producers, and that in itself is a role that is to kind of like, endear yourself, to make sure that everybody around you is nurtured and taken care of. So what I've advocated is that we need to actually create leaders, and leaders that push the business aspect of animation and VFX. For the longest time, animation is seen as a it's like, it's not a business, it's a hobby. You do this for fun. When you actually haven't made it in school, you go into animation or you go into art. So the first thing that I've been pushing in terms of narrative is for people to appreciate that this is a high tech. It requires a level of acumen within the artistry, like within art, but also the scientific aspect of it. And why that's important for women is so that we're not also pushed back because we're seen as, the really, nice ladies who just do the background work or the work that assists everybody and supports everybody. So that's very important for me. I think we need to nurture business around creativity, and women are front and center of that. So what I've done is positioning Chocolate Tribe and Abidjozi as an initiative, as a business initiative, so people understand that this is not some, kind of like, superfluous, flowy thing. I love your dresses, by the way, and I'm just, yeah, I'm just very cognizant of the fact that when I'm talking about Flavia, I keep looking at your dresses and all of that. But what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the roles that women have been given in this industry have been support roles. You know, mammy, you're the one that's like kind of like making sure everybody is in a nice and happy space. And so for us, it's very important to give those roles that are meaningful and powerful and that are impactful. And then just lastly, I love what Ziyanda said as well about the element of aggression, in the sense that indeed when I also came into the space, so I came in as a lawyer, and obviously my attitude was, you're an A-type, go get this, you know, and don't say it type of thing. But what I've learned through this industry is the art of compassion and leaning in, you know, and widening the circle and opening up. And it's not a weakness. It's great to be vulnerable and opening up, and I think opportunities come through that way. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate what you said about aggression, because we then, as leaders, most of the time, we then internalize the male stereotype of being powerful, and we wear those clothes and that attitude, and we move in that direction. And it's important for us to, come in with compassion and a sense of, leaning in and opening the circle.
Nice. Thank you so much. So we've heard from Tracy in terms of story representation in and out. You were speaking about bringing the nurturing aspect within the C-suite, and you were speaking about technical expertise for women in addition to business skill set and empowerment. Now I'm going to turn to the broadcasters. We have Flavia and we have Shirley. So from your perspective, I'd like to know what initiatives on the ground are being put in place for, it is the female filmmaker who's in Durban, for example, who wants to get into film. What initiatives are being put in place? I think I'll direct this question to you, Flavia, then I'll move to you, Shirley.
I mean, there's quite a huge and deliberate intentionality from MultiChoice to ensure that women are equipped, empowered, and are in rooms and spaces that wouldn't necessarily be the case. And so, whether it be that we bring a piece of content to Shirley to pitch, or we commission for various tiers and various genres within the spaces and platforms that we're in, we are very much deliberate in ensuring that there are women and leaders in that space. As we, know that predominantly most of our audiences are female, and a lot of our stories are female-led. For us, it is important that that sort of like transformation is also seen in the people that are making the stories. So producer A brings a concept to us, and it's a very female-led type of story. The insistence from the content teams who are managing the project will be, we need a strong female head writer, a strong woman head writer, a strong woman director, a strong woman producer to come into the space. Another huge part of the transformation that I've really been so happy to be, being able to see the growth of that is just how MultiChoice has in the past few years been so aggressive in ensuring that a lot of writers and producers and just practitioners in general are uprooted from their positions and are propelled to start their own production companies to produce for us. So we would find that you have a really talented and equipped a writer who happens to be a woman, but they don't know that they're a businesswoman, and you just like have a brilliant concept. Instead of working for a production company, start your own company and commission for some projects. And there's many stories, and if you look at the type of hours that we put up this year, last year, and the previous year as well, there's a lot of women that have been empowered to be executive producers, and that's something that we run. But aside from just television practitioning, there's a women's forum at MultiChoice, and that is sort of an initiative that enables women to have strategic mentorships and placing them in spaces where they're able to access people they wouldn't necessarily access. We also do have our enterprise development initiative, which is really a sense an incubator accelerator of some sort to startup companies, and there's a strong women focus on it. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on, but I think the issue of ensuring that women are empowered isn't something that's just a transformation quota that is being sort of like, catered to. It's walking into rooms and having directors and CEOs and people who are in leadership positions internally as well, who are women, and in that leaving the door open for a lot of women to grow. I mean, I just spoke about my promotion, which was very much propelled by women in this space as well. And I think with that sort of nuance, there is an intentionality in making sure that women are empowered. But even the men that are in the space are great allies as well. It really is just a culture of us to make sure that women are in the space and they are dominating, and I'm very happy to be a part of it. Sorry for the long-winded answer. Yeah.
So we'll speak about allyship a little bit later on, but perhaps Shirley, just to segue slightly from the response, which thank you, that was beautiful and detailed. What is the role you see in terms of mentorship for women, for example, in your personal capacity? How do you ensure mentorship for younger female filmmakers within your own, work relationships, for example?
Thanks for that question. I think we've just had this wonderful breakfast this morning and such inspirational women. And when you look at introspect and look at yourself, you actually realize that, hey, surely you've been doing this, maybe consciously or unconsciously. But on a conscious level, my current team is predominantly females because they bring the balance of both worlds in the spaces that we need. But also from a storytelling perspective, often women are best to tell certain types of stories because what I'm very passionate about is that the characters that we have on air are understood fully because often women are seen as dramatic. They just want things, and I'm very deliberate with the content team to say what is her psyche. We need to understand where she comes from, what are her triggers, because only in that way are we able to speak to our female audiences, because I think we're very much understood, and it's very easy for story writers to stick to the usual stereotypes. And I'm not about stereotypes, it's about authenticity. So that mentorship I give to the content hub, but also the producers. I work very closely with producers in terms of the feedback that we give them. But also internally we have a coach and mentorship program. So I'm a qualified business coach, and I've insisted that the people that I coach are females because I feel like I would have a better connection with them, as well as working with the MultiChoice Talent Factory, where we take in the interns and we expose female interns to sports, because normally they would just throw them away from sport. Why can't a female camera lady do sports? And this was the success on when we brought an all-female crew down to do the Netball World Cup, and that was from Super Sport. So for me, it's something I never forget in the morning that I'm a woman. I'm very proud of it. I feel like being a woman brings a different empathy, and we have a level of respect of both men and women. And being assertive is something that is not always necessary. If you come from a very informed perspective, you come prepared, you are professional, you are not emotional, and you stick to what the argument or the agenda is about. Business is not personal, and often some women fall into the trap of making it personal. It's not personal, it's about the strategy. What are you driving, and what are you bringing to the table, and how are you showing up?
Okay, I'm going to throw in a bit of a curveball question here, because this is something that's come to mind as I'm listening to you all. What advice would you give to the 10-year-old version of you who's looking in the mirror right now, who wants to do incredible and amazing things? And I'm going to open this to the floor. What would you say to your 10-year-old self? Advice that possibly people on the floor can then utilize to pursue this career in media, film, and television?
I think what's irrefutable is your technical abilities to do something. So if you're able to do something amazing, and let me speak within the realm that I'm in, animation and VFX. If you are great at your strategy, great at creating content, lean into that, and focus on your ability to do something, because that's something nobody can take away from you. I think just to bounce off Shirley's point, being emotional is a great tool in itself. So there's nothing wrong with being emotional, but you've got to make sure that that is
appropriately applied to the situation. So for me, it's focusing on your abilities, your capabilities, honing on that. And then I think everything else kind of like grows from that. There's a danger often of people thinking that, surrounding yourself with the frills and thrills of who you know, yes, it might help you. But if you're able to do what you're great at, there's nobody who can take that away from you. So for me, it is about abilities. That's what I would tell my 10-year-old self, to focus on the goal, be focused on that.
I think for me, it's to not lose that playful spirit. Often when you become a teenager, you are now supposed to behave a certain way. You're not supposed to play with boys anymore. You just focus on school, and then you must graduate and pick up something. And I feel like the spirit is kind of, I won't say killed, but it's suppressed in a way. And you are very fortunate, or I find myself very fortunate in that I found that space. I never lost it. I was a daydreamer. I mean, all my school report was she daydreams. So I get to still dream and play, but still make a difference in what I do. So it's not to just hold on to that imagination, hold on to that playful side, and trust it, because I believe that it will guide you to your actual purpose and the career that you are eventually meant to land on, whether it's corporate, whether it's NGO, whether it's charity, whatever it is. But if you just continue with that intuitive playfulness and trusting it, I think I would be further than what I am today. But I could consider myself very fortunate in that I managed to find that side of me, and I get to live it every day.
And it's daydreaming. It's manifesting rather, not daydreaming. So that's what you do. Tracy?
I think listening to yourself. Sometimes there are so many voices around us, it becomes distracting. And I think you need to quiet yourself. I would tell myself to quiet myself down and introspect, because everything that you need, you have inside of you. And I think once you tap into that and connect with that, other things start manifesting. You meet the right people. This morning's breakfast, Mo was speaking about dream killers and dream makers, and I think that that's a really important thing that she said about the dream killers and the dream makers. To surround yourself with people who will be honest with you, but will support you. So not to be delusional, and like yes all the time, but to be honest with you, but support you. But it doesn't matter if you're not connected to yourself. None of that matters if you're not listening to yourself. So I tell myself to listen to myself, because I have and I had everything that I needed inside, and the world will meet you in a place where it can help you once you connect to yourself. So it sounds very spiritual, but what we do is spiritual. So it starts with you.
I mean, yeah, it's very hard for me to answer that, because mine is a very different approach. I think 10 years ago, that's when I sort of started becoming a practitioner, and I just graduated. And I've been so fortunate to have a lot of enablers in the form of women that has sort of solidified and really propelled my career to where it is, right? So, I remember yesterday just rocking up and I saw Kristen Roberg, who's the commissioning editor that wasn't safe whilst I was cable bashing and making coffee for everyone. And I was still at varsity, and she was like, take my number, don't tell anybody, and call me once she's graduated. And I called and went for a day at MultiChoice, and then another woman who started to sit and hired me almost immediately, and another woman, Nicola, promoted me almost a year ago, and like after the fact, and then my journey just started growing and growing and growing, and now, like I said, there's a lot of women that have sort of groomed who I am and propelled my growth, the Shirleys and the Nopses of the world, etc. And so, I guess what I'm saying is I've really had the privilege in these past 10 years to have seen a lot of graceful women in power, graceful black women as well, women of color, who are not oppressive, who don't just want to be the only ones in the room, at the table, and be sitting there, but opening the door, pulling me up, telling me you have a voice, you are special, you do have something that stands out, right? And I think being inspired and being blessed to have access to that and being a beneficiary of that sort of notion and that grace has sort of propelled for me to also ensure that in every room that I am, there are people that look like me, there are more women, and I'm also enabling with the little bit that I have. And so I guess for me, what I'll say is maybe 10 years ago, I would have told myself to start now with what I have, where I am, and not think that I need the experience or the expertise to do whatever it is that I needed to do. Because I think we are so powerful with our various nuances and experiences and stories as women, and there is enough space for all of us to flourish in it. But the journey needs to start now. There'll never be an ideal time to do what it is that you need to do. Now is the right time.
Thank you. Ziyanda.
I would have told the 10-year-old Ziyanda that you are enough just the way that you are. And that would have helped me avoid so many mistakes throughout growing up of trying to be somebody that I wasn't because I was a minority. I would have told my 10-year-old self that there is going to be many of you, and you will be in those rooms where you can influence strategic decisions that will change people's lives. Own it, it is your calling, and don't be apologetic about it, because you are needed in this world just the way that you are. I've made so many mistakes trying to emulate men. I've made so many mistakes trying to emulate other people. I've made so many mistakes trying to emulate whites because I wanted to be accepted as one of them as opposed to who I was and who I am. And I think we all sitting here is just an example of the fact that many years ago, we did not know that we were enough. We did not know that it was possible for us to sit here. And we walked through a very difficult life trying to be people that we weren't. So I would tell a 10-year-old, somebody who was looking at me right now, I have a 9-year-old daughter, that she is perfectly fine to be as amazing as what she wants to be when she grows up. There's that dream that we all have. And the wonderful thing about dreaming, and it's weird, I realized much later in my adult life, the wonderful thing about dreaming is that nobody else can see it. Nobody else can see your dream. Nobody knows what it looks like. Nobody knows what it's going to turn out to be. Nobody knows any of that. It's the best kept secret one can have. And to believe and buy into that singular vision that you have of yourself is a future already predetermined. And believe that what you're doing is preparation in order for the opportunity to present itself for you to realize your dream. That would have been a very deep thing to say to a 10-year-old. But yes, if the 10-year-old version of myself could understand all of that, I would have made her understand that one day we're going to be sitting in the way that we look, proudly so, and being able to influence change just the way we are.
It's not famous, I would. So I just want to point us back to something that you mentioned, Flavia, which was the case of allyship. And obviously, one of the things that happens when social groups are starting to get a more egalitarian approach in terms of workforce is it becomes an us versus them mentality, which obviously everyone wants to avoid. So the question I have is, I'll ask this to you, Nosipho. How do we prevent that us versus them mentality, working with men, for example, in the workforce, so that it's more of an allyship and working together? How do we do that?
I think we have to be honest with ourselves as a community. And the first thing that you do when you see an issue or a problem is to diagnose it correctly. And so we have to be honest that for the longest time the space was not equal, the space was not egalitarian, it wasn't fair, it was skewed towards one side. And this is both in sort of like a white context and also a male context and privileged context and various aspects. And so I think we have to be honest with ourselves and the community that we're in. The one thing for me that's been very important is making sure that there are a lot of voices around me to make sure that you're not a sounding board of your own, because what you see, you end up doing as well. You know, so it's important that you have a level of an equal team or a team that gives you that space to open yourself up to that equality. But just to get back on your point, because I feel like I'm straying off my point. I'm hearing all the noise around me. Could you just kindly ask the question again?
Is how do you prevent an us versus them mentality to even think that's a thing? But let me make it simpler.
I mean, to my point, but also, yeah, honesty is very important. The practical point that a lot of people come into a workspace is through employment or starting your own business. So if you're being practical, you have to make sure that your policies within the company are very open to diversity, to different people, different voices. You cannot close the space just for the people that look like you, talk like you, and sound like you. So that's the first thing. So your hiring policies are very important. Who is in the room? I can give you an example of, I was in an interview because I'm part of the hiring panel at Chocolate Tribe, and there was a young lady who spoke Sotho, and she was trying to say something. The fact that I was there as a person of color, and understanding what she was trying to say, I was able to translate and decode what she was saying. And that could have easily gone south as an interview, and her abilities and her capabilities would not have manifested or risen up had she not had somebody there who speaks the same language as she does, who understands what she's trying to do. So I think for me, it's very important to have people who can intercede on your behalf, who understand where you're coming from, and who are able to be, and I think you said it quite eloquently in terms of there were a lot of enablers in the way for you. So for me, that is very important. There's definitely a situation where when we are all fighting for the same resources, and the creative space, often when things go wrong, we're the first ones to go. And if you look at during the times of COVID, the creative space suffered the first and the biggest blow in terms of investments. There was a lot of disinvestment in the creative space. So what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is that we have to make sure that there are enough resources so there isn't a them in our situation, because what we're really genuinely fighting for is a place at that table. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to create our own tables. Make those tables, expand them so that we're not at each other's throats trying to undermine or take over another space. So the more resources, the more enablers they are, the more open sounding board, so that you're not just speaking to the whole community, you're speaking to a variety of people. That makes sense.
So the table essentially is big enough for everyone. And I suppose maybe it is a question, and I'm going to ask you, Ziyanda, do you actually think gender does play a role within this industry in terms of, for example, any advantages that you might see? Or is that not the case anymore?
Gender absolutely plays a role in this industry. One of the proudest moments of my life, and I'm going to pick up on what Shirley said because I think that we have a similar journey, is that there's some years ago where there was a conscious decision that was made by the industry to start putting the woman lead first. Remember that? There was a time when we wanted to focus on strong female lead characters, and we were looking back at, changing the way that women were seen at the time. And in order to achieve the true reflection of what a woman looks like on screen, we needed to have we needed to have those voices that were women in those positions that would matter in order to, translate exactly what it is that is intrinsic in being a woman. We did not do it alone. There was men. And the importance that there is for us to acknowledge is that as we continue to grow as women, as we continue to create space for other women to be in this industry and in this space in leadership roles, we need to be cognizant of the energy that we put out there. We need to be cognizant of the power that we exude. Have you seen when a woman walks into a room full of men? It is power into any room. When you go in there, you change the dynamic of the room. So gender does play a role, and the minute that the woman walks in there, yes, it's in her presence, it's in her being, it's in her gorgeousness, it's in her beauty that she arrives in that room. However, the minute that she speaks is the second opportunity for a woman to create a balance in the energies in the room. And I think the women that are sitting here are very good examples of the fact that when we walk into those rooms, we are prepared. We have a point to make. There is an agenda that we're driving, and it's an agenda that is a business-driven agenda. It's not a personal agenda. It's not about the fact that we are women. It's not about anything else. It's about the business of the day. And as we're able to articulate the vision that we have and what it is that we're going to contribute to that strategic decision that's going to end up on a television screen and affect millions of people, hopefully billions of people in the world. So there is a role that the gender plays a very good role in creating a balance. There's a space for equality in these rooms. Our society is made up of men and of women, and without a balance of the two, we're not going to be truly articulate and reflect back to our audiences what it is like just to live in the society that we do. So there's a male role, there's a female role, and the other thing that I just remembered is that, I learned in psychology much later in life, of course, that in order for us to be a whole person, you need to have a balance of a masculine and a feminine in you. Women and men possess a masculine and a feminine in how they present and how they are created. So we must not forget that, men and women actually have the ability to be masculine and feminine at the same time. And it's all about which levers we pull in order to get what reaction, in order to affect what change we want to affect. So gender plays a role. However, we must recognize that we have a balance of both the masculine and the feminine in us.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask one last question, then I will open up to the floor if you guys have any questions, which from eager faces I'm seeing that there's quite a few questions there. The last question I'm going to ask, guys, is related to imposter syndrome, which we've all experienced, right? It's a constant, pervasive subject matter. So I want you guys to give me one of your secret sort of adaptations to imposter syndrome. For example, you walk into a boardroom meeting, it's scary, you feel intimidated. What is the one thing you do? Not go to the bathroom and cry. What do you do? One small thing that you do and have done.
So I want to share my imposter syndrome. So like when I came into this space, I came in as an attorney, and I had this thing that I wasn't good enough as a creative, and I was leading creatives. How do I lead creatives as an attorney? And so, and it was a painful journey. It was a lot of bashing. For one, I was trying to force creatives into the legal understanding of how you do things. You have documents. You don't just handshake and a deal is done. And where the NDAs, where's this, where's that? And how that's helped me when I walk into a room is firstly to understand that I'm dealing with people who look at things in a different way. I've also got to open my mind to that. And maybe luckily enough, as lawyers, we are sort of failed actors. So when we walk into a room, you're already, in action mode, even though we may not be as great as a creator. So I think for me, it was kind of like learning how to speak in a different way and understanding things in a different way and taking on board as well lessons that I would not have had I kind of continued on a sort of legal mindset. So, yeah.
I think first of all, know what you're walking into. Depending who your audience is going to be. Do that research. Look at the brief. What is expected of you?
how much time do you have? So how concise does your language have to be? Are you speaking to accountants? Are you speaking to lawyers? Are you speaking to format holders? So once you have that information, you then craft your response, right? But it's easier said than you're at home now. You know what you're going to say. Then you walk into this room and it's your turn to speak, and then the nerves hit. I think what I do, and I always say, like, there's a part of me that wanted to be a performer. I have a persona that then I go into. She is confident. Yes. And you go into that persona and you give it your all. And often when I'm done, I mean, you did so well. And then Shirley comes back and she's like, oh my God, I was so nervous. I could have said that. I could have said that. So that self-doubt then does kick in afterwards. But if I remove myself from my fears and my insecurity and the I'm not good enough, or I'm going to make a fool out of myself, and you just kind of go into, it's not a trance, but you're just there, and I'm going to deliver this and make myself proud and make my team proud, because you represent all the people that gave that input into that presentation. And then after that, you then kind of can let it go. But it doesn't end there. You then get the feedback. Ziyanda, how did I do? Where can I improve? Did I go on too long there? So that feedback is important so that next time you do better. So it's not just about surviving that moment or that presentation. It's about ensuring that you get better and better and better, and surrounding yourself with people that will be honest enough to say, well, you lost me at that part, that went a little bit. And then expect to be interrupted, because interruptions means they want to understand. It's very different to speak to a quiet audience and then they don't say anything. Like, that makes me very nervous. I'd like to be interrupted. Please elaborate. What do you mean by that? Because sometimes maybe I missed something. So prepare. Know who you are speaking to. Find a way to deliver it in the best way that you can. Be okay with mistakes and get the feedback, and then do better next time.
I also love that you summarize all the points for us as well.
Yeah. Do we need to add on? I would like to add on to that as well. I have a similar approach. So preparation is key. But I pray as well, and I talk to myself. So I sort of hype myself up as well from the mirror. Then I go onto Insta and I see of me doing things, and I'm like, yes, I did it then, I'm going to do it now. So I really do this. And then I've got a group of people that I call. I mean, Babato Cow knows that I ask her all the time, like, hey, do you have 5 minutes? And she's like, yes, and we just chat through things. There's Bongi Salani, we're talking about women that speak good things about you in rooms and champion you. She does that when you're not in the room as well. So I've got a praying ritual, I've got a meditation ritual. I remember through visuals. I mean, like the pictures of us doing this and chatting. I was like, yes, we did this. And before I came here, I was nervous. And I was doubting myself, like, oh my word, look at these women. I'm sitting with them, you know? And so I have to hype myself up and remind myself who I am. Remind myself of what I've done. You know, watch the work I've done, the good things and the bad things, and embrace it, because that's your journey. You have to own it. But I do think that hyping yourself up and surrounding yourself with your hype people who will be honest with you, but also motivate you. I think that's key before you're going into a situation, to remind yourself who you are, what you're capable of, and that this is only the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more.
I got it. Get yourself hype, woman. Thank you, Tracey. Flavia?
Look, I think just first and foremost, we put so much pressure on ourselves as women. And I think one of the things that I had to do, navigating around spaces where I'd walk into rooms and I'd have to give some sort of creative guidance to
production companies and production houses and producers that probably been creating for television and film before I was even born. I had to have a mind shift to walk in there knowing that my essence is enough and my voice matters. I might not have the experience, but I might have the viewer experience, or I might have a different perspective that hasn't been thought of, right? So walking into those rooms knowing that I'm not going to be the most articulate, the most experienced, the most knowledgeable person, but I'm going to be me. And there is room for me to be able to contribute to whatever conversation, right? And in that, channeling your mind before you go into any space to know that you might not know it all. And so you have to have a teachable spirit. And you will make mistakes. And that's okay. And you will ask for questions and question things that you don't know. And that's okay, because I think it also speaks to approach, right? Whenever you walk into a room or you go into a space or you have an engagement with an attitude of this is a give and take and we're both contributing, as opposed to I need to know it all, I think that vulnerability allows whoever's on the receptive end to be able to take you in and listen to what you're saying. So I think as women we should be able to combat for imposter syndrome by ensuring that we don't feel like we want to know everything or be overly prepared or be the most knowledgeable in every space that we go into. Because I know the pressure is there for us to be that, right? But it's okay to say, this is my specialty, this is my essence, and this is what I bring to the table. I might not know for everything else, but what I bring is enough. And so that has helped me in situations where maybe I'm not the most eloquent or sort of experienced person, but I walk in with the confidence knowing that my essence matters, and where I don't know, I will speak up and ask.
I particularly like the aspect of being gracious and kind to yourself, because it's speaking to such positive self-talk as well, going back to piping. I love that. And question to you.
I mean, ladies have spoken my life, they've spoken my situation. Imposter syndrome is something that you've each articulated in a way that I've experienced in myself as well. But there are practical things as well that, I have found have worked for me. Nothing wrong with a notebook.
Yes.
The notebook is the best way to distract yourself whilst you are in a room where you are nervous about speaking or saying or feeling like an imposter. Writing everything down, I know it's old school, but it really helps. It's the best way to hide your fear and to redirect your insecurities. Write everything down, and then you can go away afterwards and study it, and then go to the people individually and say, what you said there, I wasn't quite sure, could you expand on that? And then the other thing that I know, and I had to learn over many times of saying things that I thought, oh my God, why did I say that? Yeah. Is to keep quiet is actually not a crime. To spend an hour in a meeting where everybody is talking, to not be the voice that also wants to be thrown in there and wants to be heard and must be heard, because it's important that you are heard and you have an opinion, and the imposters going to speak, women speak. It's okay to just keep quiet sometimes and to take in what everybody else is saying. And when the time comes, you will know when the time comes for you to add value to the conversation that is happening, and you will say what it is that you need to say. And then a third trick that somebody told me was, you know what? You make a very good point. Can I come back to you later on that? Yeah. When you don't know, you know what? That's a very good question. That's a very great point that you make. Let me come back to you on that, because I just want to check my, notes from the last time that we spoke, and I'll come back to you and give you an answer on it. And that's the ways that I've dealt with my imposter syndrome, by saying as little as possible, by writing things in my notebook, and by saying, I'll come back to you. And that's okay.
Yeah. Very good question. And the other person was asking the question that somebody feels valued as well. So they feel like you've heard them and, I get the privilege of you going away and thinking about what I've just said. That is fantastic. And you make them feel good. And yes, you are going to follow up later and go, you know what you said, Kudi. I've thought about it, and now you've had the chance to ask and do your research and come back to the person with a proper, well-researched answer.
I'm going to be using most of these in my personal life. Okay, now we're going to open up to the floor. I don't know if there's a roving mic around. It would be amazing if we can get someone to speak. We'll take a few questions. Please put your hands up if you do have questions. Minette, lovely to see you. We've got a question here in the front.
Thank you so much, ladies, for such a very informative session. I really enjoyed it. My question is to Flavia and Shirley. So Tracy mentioned, especially since we are talking about shaping of women in film and television, both in front of camera and behind the scenes. So Tracy spoke about the representation of women in film, and I do consume a whole lot of Showmax and Ngcaba, so I am one of the biggest consumers. But I've seen a trend, like starting from lockdown, a trend going from Lindy Wetigana to Harriet to Mamno Masondo. There seems to be all these black leading female that we're vouching for. They're all the same thing. Corrupt, drug lords, manipulative. And I'm just like, is that what MultiChoice or Mnet thinks that's what big black female lead means? Or that's because that's something that is just selling right now to consumers? Because I'm like, oh, yes, we're having all these strong black leads, but why are they all just like the same thing? Why are they all correct drug lords? Yeah.
Who wants to start with that question?
I'll take it. Is it Lucy? Mimi, apologies. Thank you so much for consuming the content and for the excellent observation. I think for me, what I'll say, and this is just a personal response to you, what type of women do you want to see on screen for those platforms? Create that sort of story and submit, and you will be glad and happy to commission it if you submit that. Because I think, and I guess that was a conversation I had with a couple of filmmakers at the DFM a few weeks ago where, you know, again, it's the issue of representation, what's been put on air. And I think people need to understand that the room that we're in here, the practitioners and the creators that are in here are the ones that are shaping the content that we commission, right? We will commission what is submitted to us. And so if there is a gap and there is a representation that we'd like to see, absolutely they are, like you said, we have a strong drive to empower women and women-led production companies as well. Please do submit those concepts so that we can have the type of representation and portrayal you want to see on screen. So I'm hoping that you will send through some submissions to us. Shirley, I don't know if you want to expand on that.
And I think it's also important for you to look at the content as a whole, right? So you've identified key pieces of content, yes, but look at what we offer as a whole, as the local interest channels. And I think once you do look into some of our reality formats, what we have on the Access Bouquet, what we show on the Biscope channels, you'll see that we definitely do strive to show women in a very realistic, mothering, nurturing, loving, black, empowered, educated, positive human being. And I think also what's important is when we have these characters, they will always, good always wins over evil. We are very intentional about that to say, you can't just get away with just being, so one day karma or however you believe will come to these characters. And often you'll see they are also surrounded by nurturing characters around them. And are they learning their lessons? Are they continuing to make the mistakes? Obviously that's how the story goes, but at some point, you kind of have to reckon with what you've fated. It's what you've created. So there will always be consequences for those type of characters.
All right, we've got time for about 3 more questions. Remember, guys, we have people with varied experience on the panels. This is animation, broadcasting, development, production house. You can ask any question within those realms. Yes, you please. Can we get the mic to her? Thank you. Oh, who's first? Were you first? Okay, you were first.
Sorry, can you hear me?
What's your name?
Hi, my name is Nana Kalapura, and I'm a screenwriter actor. I wanted to follow up on her question I think the raging storm inside most consumers is that most of the time you think about the everyday consumer who comes back from work at around about 6, and most of the time when they engage in stories, it's usually between your 6 to 9, and most of the stories that are on at that time and the access that they have to those stories, it's particular stories, and of which she mentioned, are the stories that portray those matriarchs in such a manner. So yes, there are various versions or how do I say, representations of the everyday black woman that you guys offer in terms of your different mediums and shows. However, I feel like, how do we, especially also in our institutions, I'm currently finishing my master's at AFTA, as writers, there's this thing where they push down the, not at AFTA, but like in the sense that they push down that ability to redefine the everyday black woman. And it starts in the beginning, us as young writers who want to come up and change the everyday black woman in those stories that are shown at 6 to 8 or 9, or you're in the river. What would you say as the panelists? How would you encourage us? Yes, you want us to apply and submit, but we get discouraged as young writers because we feel like it won't even make it to the actual big screen in the actual time that is consumed most, which is the 6 to 8s. It's usually those unknown platforms where we can redefine. But till when are we going to start to see a change in the way we see our everyday black women? Yes, there are I think there's a Ehostela, there is the different versions like Mama Beka or Mama Mutana. So there's different shows that are coming up which are trying to show the same, but they have the same corrupt women. You know what I mean? When do we start seeing that change, and how do you guys advise us as future young stars and legends of tomorrow?
I'll start. I think this is a multifaceted question. I think it's speaking to broadcasting, which is something that was addressed in the earlier question, but I think it's also speaking to aspects of production and development. So I'm going to let Tracy and you speak, just so you can give us a different perspective from what was given, because they will be able to advise from a development perspective, how do you get your story across to these guys so that it's seen.
So I think so there's not one way to be a woman. There's not one version of a woman. There are many versions, and I think it starts with the writer, your worldview and where you come from, right? What you have to say and what you bring, your lived experience, is really important in a writer's room. And so what I would suggest and recommend is to connect and be part of writers' rooms and programs, like story development programs, where you can write those stories. I think right now the female filmmaker slate is being spearheaded by the NABF and Yellowbone. Right? That's a fantastic program. There was a call out a few months ago. There are more programs coming from the Writers Guild of South Africa. There are more programs coming from my own company, Trajectory. There's always call outs. I think if you join industry bodies, you know and you see the call outs sooner rather than later. And that allows you an opportunity and an incubation to develop your story where you grow your characters, right? With a story consultant, you grow your story with a TV series or a film to a point where your vision for what that woman that you want to see on screen is in your head comes across on the page in a script. Where you're ready enough, where you're at a point where you can pitch it to a broadcaster, or you can raise finance to yourself for it, or you can decide to make your story on TikTok or YouTube. I mean, remember, Issa Rae had a similar issue with representation of black female archetypes, which led to Insecure. And what she did is nobody was calling her back when she sent her proposals, and so she decided to film herself and show this black representation, this new way of a way that hasn't been shown on screen of what a female could be on her web series, Orbit Black Girl. And that garnered so much interest. There were like millions and thousands, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions of people sort of logging in, wanting to watch the next episode. To a point where it got so much hype and so much views that you had, I think it was Pharrell or some musician, investing in the web series to a point where HBO came to her. So there are always ways to show that, there are programs, development programs, incubation programs. While you're still sending through your proposal, join the program, right? But also record that version of what a female should, another version of a female looks like in terms of character. There are so many platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Insta Stories, build your audience. So there's always a way, if you've got a vision and you've got that drive, to show new insights and new perspectives of what a black female character could and should be.
Can I just jump in? I think we also have to interrogate our own internal narratives of how women have been portrayed in the past. And because of that, as you were talking, I was thinking of the Eve mentality, that Eve is the one who gave Adam the apple, and therefore she's the wicked witch. And that's kind of like a narrative that's kind of come through history. Women being devious, being a trickster, and all of that. So I do think from the depths of when we start writing, but also when we teach writing and developing scripts and stories, we need to understand that from a psychological level, we need to unravel all of those mentalities of the woman being this snake-like creature who is going to turn a situation to her advantage. So it's a narrative thing. And so that's my first point. The second point is really also from a business perspective, we need to follow the money. What is making money? Is portraying women in this way making money, and is that why it's being done? And challenge those narratives. So that's my point.
I'm just going to ask Ziyanda to just also weigh in on this as well. Just from a production company perspective, you also deal with the broadcasters and streamers, so you'll be able to speak a little bit more to, is this what sells, to inform your response?
I've been a broadcaster, I've been a freelancer, I've been a distributor, I've been all of these things. And the advice I would give to the ladies that have already gone as far as observing where the gap is in the market, you've already won. Because you've identified an opportunity to use your voice in a way that is not being used at the moment. Prepare. Preparation is an opportunity. Carry on, believe in that voice, write that voice. Because an opportunity is going to come one day where someone is willing to hear your portrayal of a woman in the way that you say it. Very simply. But from a production company point of view, I mean, it's all about getting the right people around you. This is a business, and stories sell. And the narrative that is out in the rest of the world is a narrative that is commercially viable. And the reality that we have to realize as creatives is that we're not only here to tell the stories, we're here to tell stories that make money. And not just change, people's lives. The stories need to make money. So it's to follow the trends of the world. Where is the commercial viability sitting? And understand that whatever it is of the package has got to make financial sense. When you go into the broadcasting, when I was in broadcasting, I was always, wanting to hear somebody tell me how it is that my story was going to generate audiences, which would then generate revenue. And when you can answer that question beyond what your story is going to do for the channel, in terms of creatively and editorially, you've got to be able to see the vision right through to the fact that your client who you're trying to impress has got a bottom line to it, and they've got a goal to reach. And when you can appreciate the broadcaster's goal, you are able then to work together with them to assist them get to the place where they want to be, which is ultimately making business sense of creativity. That's our job.
Are you happy? Sorry, who has the mic? Just very quickly, and then we need to go to her last question.
It tickled my tummy, as I usually say to my teachers. If it is that version of the woman right now that is silent, then how do we bring the different versions and bring it to broadcasters? I just wanted to hold on to that question because it feels like it's the version of that type of woman that's and maybe if you could encourage us that there are other women, versions of women who sound, because we usually are hit with that question of how is it going to make money, and then you think to yourself, Njani, how am I going to explain this that it's going to be? So could you maybe elaborate on how it could, that different woman, that different gap,
So before we answer that question, I'm just going to go to her question because I feel it's along the same pathway. So if you could just hold your responses on that, please could you go to her because she's also been dying to ask us a question, and then we'll respond to yours.
Morning everyone, my name is Nosipho from Bragt. I wrote down my questions. The first one was, what role can men play in supporting gender equality, especially to how do we engage them as allies in this effort? And the second one was, what strategies and initiatives are being implemented to address the gender pay, because it's an ongoing conversation and we never really get a resolution. Thank you.
So there's two sets of questions, one with regards to positive female representation and then the gender pay gap. So I'll take it to the floor, guys, who would like to respond.
And I'm responsible for the first one. I think as somebody who sits on content acquisition for linear as well as an OTT space as well, believe me when I say it goes back to what I said earlier on, we are looking for different representation, we are looking for different nuanced stories, we are looking for different types of women. We just need producers and writers to write them and submit. That's all I'm going to say, and that's what I had said to Minnie. Please do create a beautiful, compelling story and a character that you think would work in that woman that you'd like to see and submit that. And I think more often than not, as a lot of women creatives, is because you see what the status quo is, you sort of like just fold and feel like that is what needs to happen, and that's not what we're saying. We are looking for fresh, different, various type of stories and different type of heroes, villains, anti-heroes, archetypes. Create for that, make it compelling, give a proper proposal, make sure that your deck is also proper, right? And you are competent in what it is that you want to bring in. Because another issue that maybe just quickly to touch on is a lot of women or female filmmakers will come into a space without the necessary training, without the necessary mentorship, without the necessary competence, and just expect that, things will be handed to them by virtue of them being women. And I think that's a lot of our problem sometimes, when we don't want to learn and grow, right? So one, have you equipped yourself enough? Do you have enough training? Are you finding ways in which you can expand on your skills? And if you do, then you feel like you are ready to submit, or find people that and avenues and routes that you can learn from, for you to be able to impact that change from a representation point of view.
So in other words, we look forward to watching your show that you're going to be Okay, and then just to address her question on gender pay gap, do you guys have an opinion on that? How do we make it more egalitarian in a sense? Is that even our responsibility as, developers, broadcasters? Where does that conversation start to ensure that there's more parity, I would say?
Now, absolutely, it's not even something to think about. We are here to represent society as a whole. We don't have bias against any race, culture, etc. And if we don't represent the people that are not necessarily heterosexual, we would be doing a disservice as a broadcaster. Because as much as we are a subscription-based broadcaster, we are still a South African and African broadcaster. And we are very lucky to live in a country such as South Africa where everybody is accepted. Unfortunately, some of our counterparts in Africa don't have the luxury of showing characters that are just, wonderfully colorful and happy and confident in whatever space they belong and choose to be. So there isn't any content for us that is off the cards. We are led by ethics more than anything.
no stereotypes and no bias. And the more that those stories are proposed to us, in fact, we have one in development at the moment that speaks to exactly that of the drag world and the colourful world, but in a very respectful way. The more we will then be able to invest and develop such ideas. So you as the producers also need to be brave enough to delve into that world, but come from an informed perspective, not a stereotypical one and not a biased one. Because as I said, we need to understand the true psyche of each character and why the way they are. It's not that they just chose to be. So if you bring that authenticity, it really doesn't matter in which way we decide to portray the character. But for us, definitely, if we're not speaking to our audiences, then we might as well be watching, what do we say, sipping our own Kool-Aid. So definitely that is an agenda point for us.
And I suppose maybe to answer your question, and this is a very cheeky thing for me to ask, but basically, how do you negotiate for more? A very quick sentence on the person.
I think it's imperative that women get paid equally, well, not equal to men, but for the job that they do, should be equal pay for equal work. So that's a non-negotiable. But I think the important thing is really mentorship, having women in the room who can speak on your behalf. So when you come to those negotiations, there is a woman who can, intercede on your behalf as an enabler, as an intermediary, and can tell you where. The thing is that's amazing when you've got another woman in the room, she's able to share where the pitfalls are, the things you can say, the things you can't say, how far to push, and how to pull back. So it's important to have a person who can speak on your behalf. But I think, gender pay, it's a moot point. I just don't understand why we're still fighting for it. If you're doing the same work as your male counterpart, why can't you get paid the same amount? But again, to the point that you made, there shouldn't be expectations just because you're a woman and you think that is what you're bringing to your boss to say, I'm a woman, therefore I should be paid more. It really is about the work, the capacity, capabilities, and your acumen to do that job. So,
Okay, I'd like to extend thank you to you guys. You guys spoke beautifully, and I hope you guys found this very useful. Please do follow each of them. They're all on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and if you've got any questions, please just let us know. We might be around afterwards. Thank you so much for your time, guys.
Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, we're having a discussion on a panel about fair compensation that will speak to that question in more detail. So please come to the panel and we'll unpack that in a little bit more detail. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone.